how do you think we should start this one? It's not necessarily
We just did.
This episode, we're going to talk all about gear and the things that we wish we would have known when we started out, before we started out even. So if you're starting out or you're new to the freelance video production or filmmaking industries, take a listen to this. We're going to try to cover as much ground as we can.
Yeah.
So, Pat, I'm under the impression you might have a question.
Well, yeah, I was supposed to get into it, and we were supposed to talk about stuff first.
Okay.
But I can just ask you
right
away.
I got a lot of questions. How dare you?
Yeah. Number one. No, I would say, what were your first purchases that actually were game changers for you? Like, I know I had to start off very, what's the word? Fastidious? That's not a word. Fiscally responsible.
Maybe?
So when I started freelancing, I didn't even own a camera.
Yeah. Neither of us did, really, I don't think, initially.
I owned a computer to edit.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first big purchase.
Yep.
And I would...
Let me ask this. Did you pay for the editing system that you had on the computer?
No, I did not. Jeff helped me pirate.
I don't...
But I'm paying plenty now, so Adobe should not be mad at me for that.
I think I had
I had a pirated version of Adobe Premiere way back in...
2007, 8,
yeah,
9,
it was
something like
right
that?
after college. So,
yeah.
But yeah, Jeff put it on my computer, and I was super happy that I even had something like that.
I told you not to ask any questions, and you just edited with it.
Yeah, and a pirated version of Windows too.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like I've paid Microsoft and Adobe back tenfold.
Oh yeah. I get it.
Especially with this $50 a month now that they charge for the Premiere.
The Creative Suite, Creative Cloud.
Yeah, the Creative Suite.
So you had a computer, and that's all you started out with.
Just a computer. Yeah.
What else?
I would rent my cameras.
Sure. Sometimes you'd borrow. I remember, I feel like I borrowed stuff on occasion.
Yeah. And those were the hard times where you couldn't make anything look how you wanted to because you're working with equipment that you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
But it at least got my game running. I would charge, I think it was $150 to shoot and edit.
Yeah. Like a whole wedding. Or whatever. Or
it was just
whole commercial.
If somebody was paying me money to do it, I was like, oh my God. It was the most exciting thing ever. Yeah. Like, I can't believe it. I'm getting money for this. So,
I know.
So a computer, that would be my first purchase.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I think so too. I honestly think that I would probably get a computer.
With a good graphics card.
With a good graphics card that you can edit on. And, you can get, I think, it doesn't really matter what you edit on as far as, your editing system.
Yeah, as long as it comes out.
I like Premiere. I prefer it. I teach courses on it. Yes. I like it so much. But you can get that. You can get the whole Creative Cloud. You can edit.
What did we start on? Avid?
Avid, back in the day. I think we technically started on tape to tape.
We did. In, out, out.
In the basement of Fell Hall. Yep. But our first non-linear editing systems, which are now just editing, no one knows what a linear editing system is. But so yeah, I think a computer and being able to edit, because I think one of the big things now too is this footage that comes out of cell phones is incredible. And we didn't have that opportunity when we were starting out. And you can even edit on your cell phones too. But I would start out with probably a computer.
Yeah, if you're talking production, if you're becoming a freelance video producer, you're definitely not. I would say that the game is definitely changing. There might even be people out there right now that do video production full time and do it straight on their cell phone. I haven't seen that yet, but it's got to be coming.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So,
but you can rent equipment for fairly cheap. I know I regularly rent or semi-regularly rent higher-end equipment for different projects or different equipment that I just don't want to. I don't want to invest in even at this point. From places I use Magnanimous Rentals, which is up in your neck of the woods up in Chicago.
Right,
but instead of going out and spending $800 on a camera and a microphone system, like a lower end one, for $150 for the cost of your first project, let's say, you can rent a $2,000 camera and a better microphone and a nice tripod and whatever. And
And you can also get the lay of the land and figure out what you like to use.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. Go ahead.
Yeah, you just knowing what equipment you're comfortable on and what look you're going for. All cameras have different looks.
Yeah.
That's why matching them is impossible.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like you shoot on Sony, I shoot on Canon,
and we look yellow in all my Sonys. I mean, not in this image, but
I have started turning off the yellow. Did I tell you about that?
No.
Just turning it down.
Oh, in
and
Premiere?
I think it. Yeah.
In Lumetri, maybe?
Yeah, the Lumetri, the secondary settings. I've been turning the yellow down, and I think it makes the video pop.
I'll have to try that out. I'll try that out on this one. If you're
that's more an advanced edit. So let's get back to the equipment.
Yes.
Yeah, just finding the right equipment that works well with you, I think, is a huge thing.
So don't buy a camera first. I think that's like...
Yeah, try 5 to 10 out before you think, oh, okay, this is definitely the one that I like. It's the easiest workflow for me. It looks the best. It fits my style.
Yeah.
I think that is great advice, and I probably should have taken it a little bit more than I did, because I fell in love with the first camera I rented, which was a Canon 7D.
Yeah. We had never had interchangeable lens cameras before, and like we are all of a sudden thrown in from old news cameras
into DSLRs.
DSLRs with this beautiful shallow depth of field. They're handheld.
Yep.
They don't feel like old and stuffy, and they were great. And I had my Canon T2i, and you had your 7D. You still have it?
I do have my 7D. That's what I do all my painting time lapses on. It just sits in my kitchen.
I still film time lapses on my Canon T2i that I've had for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And man, I bet I made, when I finally saved up and realized that was the camera that I was going to buy, it was the entry level Canon like Rebel series DSLR, so I could afford it. I ended up spending a little more money on a lens.
Yeah.
And
lenses are huge. We got to talk about those.
I bet that I made, over the course of the entire camera, I bet I made like 6 figures off that little camera alone.
Yeah.
Using that camera.
I'd say that's about right. Yeah.
And it was great because I got used to it. I found that the Canon at the time, the Canon color science and the usability, and it's super easy to use, was the best thing for me. So computer number one with a non-linear editing system, whatever your flavor of the week is, or that you can afford even. And then
if you start getting clients, then definitely take a plunge on a camera, because renting will obviously set you back a lot. If you're going to be getting repeat clients, then buying a camera pretty much eliminates all that, and you can now put together videos by yourself. You can shoot it and edit it out the door.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of step 2 is being able to do that on your own. And I think with a camera, so most cameras, when we're talking about cameras these days, we're talking about a camera that accepts different lenses. I mean, you can't have camcorders, which some people, might better suit your style or what you're doing. If you're filming like depositions and conferences and stuff,
it all depends on the type of freelance work you're doing.
You might want that, but let's say we're talking about interchangeable lens cameras. So like, the whole Sony Alpha line of cameras, all the Canons, Panasonic makes a bunch of them.
Yeah, Lumix.
All the other cameras. So with a camera, you need a lens. Do you remember what the first lens you bought was? And why did you buy it?
Well, I wanted a low f-stop.
For a shallow depth of field.
Yeah, shallow depth of field, because I fell in love. I think I rented a 50 1.2 one time, and I turned that to 1.2, and I was like,
and you had an orgasm.
My gosh.
You had an orgasm that moment. Yeah,
it just looks so good. Like low light brings it's like the light is wrapping around the subject. It's so beautiful. But the 1.2 at the time, I think, was $2,000 for Canon.
Yeah, so they're nice one.
I was like, okay, screw that. I'll get the crappy Best Buy 50 millimeter 1.4. Yeah. And it was like 150. And it was kind of shaky, so it had to be on a tripod. But it still gave me that first good look. Like the 7D with a 50 1.4. I was like, oh, yes.
You finally after renting and borrowing equipment that you can't, you're like, I just can't make this look the way I want. It's fine, but it's not great. You're finally able to really get the interviews look that you want.
The interviews, I think, the lower if you put it at 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, those are all like beautiful for interviews. And that was how I kind of got introduced into the corporate world, doing corporate videos because I could make my interviews look good.
Really
finally.
good. Oh yeah. I don't know if you have a percentage, but my percentage of videos that I do that are interview based is probably like well over 50%, if not.
Yeah. That's still how I guide all my videos.
Yeah.
Is I'll interview people that are knowledgeable on the subject of the video and have them tell the story instead of having a narrator or me having to
do VO or put text on screen or anything like that.
Or hire, voice actor or stuff like that.
So I think that's really important. With that, I think that you brought up a really, really important piece of equipment, and that's a tripod.
Yeah.
So after you've got, actually, let me.
My first tripod was so shitty.
We'll get to. Well, actually, I think we'll get to tripods in a second. We'll get to Pet's shitty tripod in a second. So you bought a 50 millimeter.
I did, yeah.
My first lens was a 18 to 55 millimeter Sigma lens. Ooh. So I wanted a little bit of a zoom, but it was a 1.2, I think, or maybe a 1.4.
Huh.
So, when you had it wide open, you could still get that shallow depth of field.
Yeah.
It was because it was a zoom lens and it was a lower.
I didn't know zoom lenses went to 1.4. Are you sure it was 1.4?
I'm almost positive. Maybe no. 2. I'm sorry, 2.8. I'm sorry. I think you're right. I could go grab it. We'll look it up after this episode. Okay. 2.8. So I could still, when zoomed in, maintain a good 2.8 level shallow depth of field.
Yeah, still nice.
But I had some flexibility. I was shooting a lot of events at that time, so I wanted the ability to go from a little wider to maybe a little more zoomed in. But telephoto lenses, when you're shooting events, are horrible. We didn't have in-camera stabilization at the time.
Right.
And so if you were trying to hold like a 70 to 200 mil lens, it was going to look like you'd had like 10 beers before you held the damn thing,
Yeah, it gets shaky.
So I wanted something wider and maybe a little bit of zoom so I could film these events. It still worked really well for interviews, which again was like most of my filming early on. But then with the interview stuff, you mentioned you needed a tripod.
Yeah.
So what was your first tripod?
I don't even know what the name was. I remember it was crappy and you had to squeeze it to move it. Yeah. So there was a trigger and you could squeeze, and that it was on a ball head. So it had a lot of different ways that it could go. But at one point my camera was so heavy and the lens that it started to it would fall.
Oh yeah, slowly tilt.
Slowly tilt. And that happened a few times during interviews, and I was like, okay, now
you're just looking at the person's crotch.
Right, yeah. It became too much of a problem that I was like, okay, I have to buy an actual tripod. And I think I spent $200 on my first good tripod. And I still have that in the trunk of my car.
Yeah.
It's my third tripod if I ever, for some reason, need 3 tripods.
Yeah.
So,
which starting out that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Even now, $200 is still a good amount of money, but you can get good quality stuff for that.
Yeah, you can.
For that price.
I know you're more of a gear junkie than I am. What kind of tripods would you recommend, starting out?
Starting out, I think Manfrotto tripods are really good, and they have every price point under the sun. I mean, you can get tripods up to $600-700, or more.
You can get tripods up to $100,000,
or for Manfrotto ones. I mean, or you can get them down to $55 even. I mean, any range of them. I think any that fits your budget is good. One of the things that I think a lot of people underestimate is, and I don't use it as much on mine anymore, is that I made sure I had a true fluid head tripod. Yeah. So for those of you watching or listening or aren't familiar with that, that's so you can do smooth, silky smooth pans and tilts and stuff. Your tripod head will move all over the place. Most tripod heads are friction heads. So it's just a clamp over a ball or something. So you if you're trying to move it while filming, it's going to be jittery or jerky because it could catch on something.
You can't get that mechanical motion almost, like a robot's turning it for you.
So that is a big trade-off you have to consider when doing it. So if you're filming sports or live action anything or documentary work, you probably want a fluid head because you need to follow that action. And because I was filming events, I got a fluid head early on. Had I not needed that, I probably would have bought the same tripod that you had. or, you know, something similar because the price was great. And I mean, if you're filming interviews, you literally just need your camera to sit there.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to move at all.
Yeah, you can just stack a bunch of books up and
Yeah.
put your camera on
And
top if you really need to.
That's something that I would recommend. Just find something within your budget that you can, that you know is going to work for exactly what you are filming. But yeah, I mean, I bought a really nice tripod years ago. I still have it. I love it. It's a Miller DS10 tripod. I actually just, I had bought some cheap Manfrotto ones. They're basically just legs with like a little head on the top. You couldn't adjust them at all. Those worked fine for some interviews, and I would actually use them for time lapses pretty regularly. Yeah. But they just didn't last. I mean, they didn't last more than like 6 years of regular use. I just bought a Peak Design travel tripod, which is like tiny. It weighs like
travel tripods are awesome.
Less than 4 pounds. Yeah. It has a friction head. It's got a bunch of really good stuff about it. I like it a lot, but it's like $300. Sure. And the carbon fiber one, which weighs like half that weight, is like $600, which is, again, it's a lot of money to spend on a tripod.
Right.
Along with some of the first pieces of gear that we were talking about, lenses, a camera, and a tripod. If you're doing interviews, you're going to need audio. Yeah. What was the first? Do you remember?
Yeah, I bought a. No, I don't remember the name of it, but I know it was $150 and it was wireless. And
like a transmitter receiver.
Receiver, okay. And it just plugged into the microphone jack in my 7D.
Yeah, and so it had like a 3.5 millimeter out or whatever it was.
It worked pretty well for like 5 shoots, and then it started to go completely terrible. Like every time I turned it on, I'd hear static.
Yep.
And that actually was one of my larger purchases. Once I realized that this was not a reliable audio thing, I bought the Sennheiser wireless kit that was like $700 or $800 at the time.
And those are, you will cry when you buy those, but like that's the last wireless set you're gonna need. Essentially,
they're great, and they have pretty good range. Like I was filming things where people would be, 2,000 yards away, and I'd still get them pretty clear.
Yeah.
So that was probably my first big purchase that was not a computer or a camera. It was spending it on audio, which is huge because nobody knows good audio until you hear bad audio.
Have it. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's so important. If you're doing interviews, you'd rather have good audio and your camera accidentally tilting down to look at the person's crotch rather than
because you
bad
can
audio.
Fill that in, but
with B-roll. I mean, really, that's what What
but if the audio's shot, then then your project's shot because and you're gonna have to learn the hard way on that. Sometimes
I think eat crow at some point
because you'll probably like not hit the
record button.
Like especially with DSLRs, you got to be going into an external recording device, and it doesn't go straight into the camera.
Something else,
So you might not press record on that. Might not.
Yep. I've been there. I've done that, and
it might
sucks.
Short out in the middle, especially if you're asking the questions and not like monitoring the audio.
Which I will mention very briefly. You need a set of headphones, but like just buy a $2 set from Walgreens on your way to the shoot. It doesn't really matter.
I have Beats now, but I did not need Beats back when I
first started. You just need to make sure that sounds or that the audio is coming through. Right. I very truthfully, I still don't own a wireless set.
Oh yeah. Well, I like the sound of my wired lav better than my wireless. So if they're sitting and they're not mobile, then I still put it on the wired.
Yeah. So I have like a Sony. I have a pair of them. They're like Sony ECM 44Bs or something. I don't know. And there are an XLR at the end, and then they have like a 10-foot cord with a small XLR cord that this red one that you're actually using, I could run from my Zoom H4n, which was the first audio recorder I bought. I could run that out, get the subject, be 10 feet away, and then it could sit there on next to me. I could monitor it. I could also run a like little auxiliary cord from the headphone out into the camera at that point. That was something that I kind of moved up to once I realized that I could do that. So yeah, I mean, you don't need expensive audio options. You could even get a Zoom H1, the little bitty, if I can pull it here, if you're looking at the camera, the little bitty audio recorder, and you can even use that. These have microphones on the end of them that you can use. Now I've got something like, $2,000 or $3,000, probably like a little over $2,000 worth of microphones and audio equipment. But you build up to that when you realize that,
especially you're much more of a gear junkie than I am. I'm like, do I really need it? And if I really need it, I get hammered.
Yeah, and then go buy it.
And then buy it.
And then he'll text me and then ask me if I should buy it.
Yeah, I do text him.
And I just go, yes,
like, should I just do it? Should I buy this? So, and those actually are some of the purchases that I do want to talk about. Is the type that you need to get drunk because you need it, but you don't want to spend that kind of money on it.
Yes. So we've got microphones, we've got a camera, we've got a lens.
Yeah.
We've got some audio, and I mean, really, and if you get that,
I would say the only other thing that is necessary is lighting. You need lighting, and that will round out the phase 1 of producing videos on your own.
Yep.
Is getting a nice lighting kit.
You remember how hot the first light you bought
was?
Oh
yeah, the little Totas.
Yeah, the little Tota.
They had little barn doors on them, and
they got to like
who was
500
helping,
degrees.
I don't know who was helping me out at one point, but they closed the barn doors while the light was still on. And then all of a sudden, it just burst into flames.
Oh my gosh!
I wasn't. They were so hot that it melted the tin foil, and then there was something on the barn doors that actually caught on fire. Yeah. So, I mean, those were awesome lights. I still use Totas, but wow, they get hot. They get so hot.
And that's to the point, that we're talking about is and those were dirt cheap lights.
I think they were $100.
Yeah, I mean, you could buy a light for $100, and honestly, if you can get a light, you can mod it, whatever it is. I'd recommend if you're starting out, probably a hard light, so like a pointed light, not a big flat panel or something, but a pointed light because you can use it for a backlight. If you've got natural light for the face of your interviewee,
and that's something you can always take advantage of. Is natural light always looks the best. If they have huge windows. Make sure they're facing the window.
Stick your interview in front of that.
That light will hit their face. It'll be beautiful.
Yeah, and then
you wouldn't even need lighting at that point.
And then use that hard light for your backlight. Or if there's not good natural lighting, if it's dark out or whatever, bounce that thing off of a wall, and you have instead of a hard light, a little hard light, you've got a big 4-foot softbox basically. So I think, and it doesn't matter, buy the cheapest light stand, and starting out, buy the cheapest light stand and the cheapest light you can basically get off Amazon or B&H.
Right.
And that's the kit you need to start working. And then as your shit breaks, you can get more.
This is all phase 1.
Yeah.
Everything you're going to upgrade because you're going to know that there are 1,000 steps to this journey that you just took step 1 and 2 and you're looking up at the temple at the top of the mountain and you're going to realize that it is an expensive game to get into, and that all of the gear that's out there,
and that temple never gets any closer.
It's a mirage.
It never gets any closer.
It's an oasis in the desert that just keeps being on the horizon.
I'm surrounded by gear right now, and it's not any closer for me than it was 10
it still
years ago.
Kind of feels like we're starting out. And I've upgraded my camera 3 times, upgraded my tripod 4 times, upgraded my audio twice. I've bought 3 drones. I've bought
you got
lighting.
A gimbal? You got a gimbal?
Yeah, I've got a Ronin now for stabilization, which is amazing. So
let's talk about drunk purchases.
Oh yeah.
So are you talking about high budget items, or the stuff that you're just pining over?
Yeah. So the first time I got really drunk to buy something, I knew I was like, I want to buy this, but I'm never going to buy it sober.
Yeah.
So I went out with some people up in Chicago, and then went directly over to my buddy Jeff's place. Yeah. And I was like, let's buy a drone. Yeah. I wanted to buy the drone as soon as I knew that they did video and they had stabilization on it, because I think aerial shots are unbelievable.
They're great. They're sexy. It's
everybody loves them.
It's a POV that we don't get to see from the ground.
But so I got into the drone game probably as soon as the first DJI drone came out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You were an early adopter.
I was there pretty early, but that was one purchase I needed to get hammered on
Mm-hmm.
and be like, just do it, buy it. I don't care what it costs. And then I woke up the next morning. I'm like, oh my
What did I
God,
do?
I bought a drone. Oh, jeez. And then it was the best decision I've ever made.
And
But
then you worry
reason,
about it for like 4 days until it gets to your house, and you're
Yeah.
like, you walk around like in a daze,
Yeah.
like wondering what you did, and
Yep.
yeah.
But now I incorporate the drone in pretty much everything, and I've gone from a Phantom 2 to a 2 Pro to a 4 to a 4 Pro, and now my next drunk buy will be an Inspire 2, which is I've been talking about for almost a year now. It's just a big step up,
It is a big
on
step
the
up.
on the temple climb.
Honestly, I think that like if you are so concerned with like never getting one nice piece of equipment or something like that, if you're constantly worried about remaining frugal and watching the budget and all this stuff, that can be as bad of a problem as what they call gear acquisition syndrome, where you constantly want the next big camera or the next whatever. I truthfully think that you should be happy with, get to know the camera that you had. As we mentioned, we both had our entry-level DSLRs for years before we upgraded. And but I've done
yours was the T2i, right?
The
now
T2i.
Now you're Sony AS3.
So I've got the Sony A7S2,
A7S2, okay.
and the Sony A6300.
And I have the Canon 1DX Mark II and the 1DX Mark III is coming out now, so
yeah,
I'm probably going to get that as well. Which is
so I'm torn between. I'll probably use my Sony A7S. I'll use the cameras that I have right now for a while. I will at some point upgrade. I'm hoping that the new Sony A7S3 or A7S4 comes out eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But I might also make the jump to like a dedicated or like a more of a cinema camera, like one of those little boxes like the Z-Cam or like a Blackmagic.
Yeah,
I don't know yet. I really don't know.
I mean, I've always wanted the Arri Alexa Mini.
Yeah.
I think, oh, God.
That would be great. My first cinema lens, which I think was the Rokinon Cine DS 35mm lens. I like the 35mm length. I bought that for my Sony A7S2. It's a full frame camera. It's a full frame lens. I had used it once before and fell in love with it on some Sony cameras when I was just kind of a production assistant or like second camera on another shoot. I loved them. They were great. The price is wonderful. They're only a few $100 to several $100s for any of the line. I liked it so much I ended up buying like a whole bunch of them. I had to get drunk for that though. I was like, I was too nervous about it. I mean, only being like, $500 or whatever. You're still just so nervous about buying a dedicated piece of gear.
Oh my God. Like I look back on me starting off in the freelance world, and I think I had like $500 in my bank account.
Yeah.
And had no idea what was going on.
Now you've got $600 in your bank account.
Yeah, but I have a lot more equipment. I have $100 million of equity in my equipment now. So
it is. You worry so much about it, but I think that you need to splurge a little bit.
You do
wisely. Don't just get
wise
drunk.
splurging is probably the best way to think about gear purchasing.
Yeah. Also, don't just get drunk and buy gear all the time.
Yeah. Don't get drunk and go online. That's a bad idea.
You'll end up like
have it in mind that you want something,
broke or something. Yeah.
That you need something that will make your productions better
or easier. Easier is a big one.
Easier
too,
is
I think.
big. Yeah. Actually, talk about easier, because what's something that's made your life 100 times easier buying it?
I think honestly, man, I think some of the biggest ones are transportation related.
Sure.
So
I'm such an idiot because I carry 6 bags and I'm like,
Pat doesn't even put his lights in bags. He just carries all the stands and shit.
That's not true.
They're just falling behind him. So transportation related, Pelican cases are worth their weight in gold, and those MFers are heavy, so they are worth their weight. I also not very recently, maybe probably a year ago now, I got a rock and roller cart, and it's expandable, so it goes from like 3 feet to 4 feet, and I can fit all of my stuff on it.
What's that run you?
This one was a couple hundred. I can't remember what model. They have like 8 models, and it runs from like $100 to $700 or $800. Okay. And they're despite the prices, I think all the rock and roller carts are considered like some of the budget friendly ones.
Yeah.
But they're used on like they're used all over the place. You see them on shoots all the time. I've seen them on sets, and it has saved my life.
All right, I'm gonna buy one.
Doing those, and they're great. They're durable. They're expandable. So if you only need a couple of things, you can put them there. If you need like a bunch of shit, put them on. There's shelves for them, so you can add 2 layers if you need. That has like just it saved my back because like, and I think it doesn't matter if you're getting a cart or whatever. Like a good backpack is good. Something that can hold the gear. And I recently found an insert that I like that can hold, it can fit in my computer bag that's a big open space. And I did it this way because my dedicated camera bag, I couldn't fit lights into it. And so I'd have to put just my camera and lenses in it and then some other stuff and then carry another case for my lights. If I have a small like run and gun, I'm the only person there to shoot.
Yeah.
And let's say I know the client is probably going to ask me to do an interview. I want to take one light with me.
Right.
So I've got my roll up light, which is actually lighting us right now. If you're watching this, it'll roll up into the size of like a large water bottle. I could put a little tripod in there or a little bitty light stand.
Yeah.
Along with another insert that fits all my camera stuff.
Yep. And
I think that has made my life so much easier.
Okay.
Something that you can adapt to.
Sure.
Other than that, I don't, all sorts of stuff have made my life easier. The more hard drive space you have, I mean, good God, you could spend whatever you spend on cameras.
Memory. We could do an hour and a half on memory because memory is so expensive and so annoying. And I have rants. On memory.
Oh yeah. I can attest.
The one camera I'm shooting on now, 1DX Mark II, takes CFast 2 cards. And
this is frustrating as shit, man.
Yeah, so CFast 2 cards are very expensive. I have 3 or 4 256 gigabyte cards for CFast 2.
Correct me if I'm wrong, like over $1,000 total.
Yeah, it's about $1,000 for memory.
Yeah.
And that'll get me about 4 hours of 4K 60 frames a second recording. That's how much memory is being sucked up by the 1DX. I just learned that the Mark III is switching from CFast 2 cards to CFast Express.
Yep, which is a different format.
Blows my mind that I'm going to have to spend $3,000 more on memory that is pretty much rendered useless after the CFast 2. I don't know the technology behind getting it to record to a card,
right?
But it is a very frustrating game to go down because memory costs a lot of money.
Yeah, and I will say that one is frustrating, big time. You don't want to skimp on memory.
No, you
don't. That is one that
especially
don't go to like Walgreens and buy like the SD card or something.
Like a card that does not write at what you need,
the speed or whatever.
It'll screw the file up.
Yep.
It will
drop frames and shit. It'll drop audio.
Things will happen in the video that you just can't get back. So it sucks, but that's one thing that you need to spend money on is getting a good memory card that can handle the amount of data that's passing through it that quickly.
Yeah. I think that's something even starting out when you're looking, you're like, oh, this camera costs $400 or $700 or $2,000. Do your due diligence and look at how many batteries you're going to need for that thing and look at how many SD cards or CFast cards or whatever, how much memory
for
you're
a full day. Just look up for what a full day would cost for you to shoot in for enough hours. Memory, for enough battery life, because at the end of the day you can charge it and dump the memory. But positioning yourself to have that covered is a big thing. So you can shoot an entire day, have power for an entire day, be able to do things for an entire day, and then that's where you should that should be your first pillar. Yeah, is getting to that point. Where you can at least reset when the day's over. Yeah. Because if you have 5-6 day shoots, you're going to be running and gunning. And at the end of the day, you're going to be dumping all that footage, clearing the hard drives, charging the batteries just to do the exact same thing the next day. So. Yeah.
And you can't be doing that in the middle of the day if you've got one card and one battery of being like, hey, client, can you wait for an hour and a half while my battery charges and I offload my footage? Right. If you're just starting out, though, I mean, it is get a battery and get a memory card, like the best one you can afford that will record what you need it to. Yeah. But then build onto that, and again, make sure you can fill for a whole day because that is, huge.
Right.
If I can't record for, 8 hours, I'm not going to get projects.
Right.
And you can rent external recorders and other stuff, but like you really need to have that covered internally.
Yeah.
That's a big one too, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration when they're thinking about their first kind of kit, or even particularly moving up to a higher ecosystem camera or whatever. Is that memory is going to cost you? I mean, like the memory for like RED cameras is like $1,000 per.
Oh yeah.
I
mean that's so we're talking about like the 10th step up that way.
It's closer to the pillar.
if we're still trying to gear this towards like beginners, and it's already probably a little daunting. I couldn't imagine listening to all this and being like, oh, I have to think about that. I can't believe I have to think about this stuff. It gets overwhelming at times, but you're gonna come across all these things sooner rather than later. They're gonna come up at you quick, and
they'll come up on a shoot.
Oh yeah, that you won't
while you're filming. They're gonna come up as you're working. That you're like, oh, I need a longer XLR cord. I need something simple like that.
I need a much bigger memory card. Yeah, just all these things are going to come up
or whatever.
Which is why production trucks are trucks, because you need a truckload of equipment,
sorts of stuff.
So, but I think we've at least covered the extreme basics.
Yeah.
Are there any like miscellaneous items that you would suggest on top of lighting, memory, lenses, camera, editing, audio?
Just starting out. Let's say we'll cover maybe just this next kind of tier. Things that we would think might make our lives a little bit easier is something that'll give you a little bit of motion for your shots. And this is, again, entirely dependent on what you're doing. You don't need a slider if you're just filming weddings, probably. If you're just filming conferences.
But you can get some good, like it's definitely an add-on, because you can get some cool shots when this stuff happens.
But, something like a small slider, a small gimbal, a drone, something like that. Something that you can find a way to fit it into what you do, I think is probably something that I would consider getting.
Yeah.
But those are things that I waited along. I mean, you've had a drone for like 6 years. I just got my first one a few months ago.
Right.
I've had sliders for years. I've built my own dollies. I have a 6-foot jib that I built.
Yeah.
I've used those before. There's a lot of those little things that I think can add a cinematic value to your project or to your filming aspect. But don't break the bank doing them. I mean, you can buy really good, budget-friendly sliders on Amazon for like $50.
Right.
You don't have to go out and buy.
Then they might get sandy and start jerking around a little bit. But I mean,
but you don't use them on every shoot and stuff. I mean, that's something that's like, again, it's something that you're like, you know what? I think this could be cool. If once you think that 5 or 6 times, then maybe start actually considering buying it.
Yeah.
What about you? You have any recommendations?
Well,
for anything else to start out with?
When I bought my Ronin, it kind of changed the way I shoot. I feel like I use it all the time now.
Sure.
I think the 1DX with the 50 millimeter autofocus on a Ronin is an insane combo to have.
It's good. It's really pretty.
Because it'll have face detection, and you can do motion, and it will stay in focus while you're doing it. So it's a one-man band to getting cinematic shots that you can keep the focus on their face. You can keep the motion steady, and it's all done by one person.
Yeah, which so you don't have to have someone pushing your dolly.
Was not possible 3 years ago, even.
Yeah,
that's something that is new, extremely new.
I mean, can you imagine when we were starting out, when we were in college, we had shoulder mount cameras that you could go on a tripod.
Yeah,
you could bring in a very expensive
rail dolly
you're setting up like hundreds of dollars worth of
where you pretty much make like a train track
through your living room. And you can do that with a tiny little, I mean, I've got a little gimbal for my Sony a6300 that was just a few $100s, and I can do insane movements with that thing. And same thing, like it'll autofocus on a face, and I can
the steps up from, so like it was dolly, and then it was just weighted.
Yep. Like glide cams,
but now it's motor assist weighted glide cams and just stabilization, and it is I don't even know what the next step would be.
I think those really high end robots. We were talking about this one time, like those high end robotic motion control ones.
Yeah, where you program it in and it does exactly that.
I think that's the
probably
next step.
True.
But that's like a whole nother thing. I mean, that's like further up that's further up towards the pinnacle of the mountain that we're climbing. But yeah, I think that's something that'll give you some motion to your videos. That's probably something that you're going to consider.
It's a big step.
I mean, even before that, I would consider adding additional lights in. And, man, I get caught up looking at lights all the time. I own a bunch of them. I love them. I've built my own before. But
lighting is an industry on its own, which is why there's so many things you could do with it. You can, once you start lighting your subjects, you'll see just how different everything can be done. Mm-hmm. Like, even turning the harshness down 5% is going to make it look completely different.
Throwing a sheet of like diffusion over it is a different ballgame.
You can do gels. You can make everything look a certain color, a certain way. You can mood light it. You can overexpose it. You can underexpose it. Do pretty much anything artistically that you want. Like, lighting is the art in video production.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one too. Is don't, like, I've still got the bunch of the hot lights that I started out with. They're just sitting out in the garage, but I, slowly started adding in more. So, now I've got big panel lights. Now I've got big whatever lights, and, they cover a range of what I do. I don't use all, whatever 20 lights I've got at any given time. I usually use them little by little, but I can cover a whole bunch of scenarios. But it comes from a decade of coming across scenarios that I need to, renting a ton of lights, renting a ton of gear, figuring out what I like, getting on other people's shoots or other people's projects is big, seeing what gear they have and how it works. Because the last thing you want to do, at the end of the day is, you work really hard for your money. You go out and you spend $500 on this light that you just had to have. It, somebody on YouTube told you it looked great. You buy it and then you're like, oh yeah, I actually don't need this because I don't do those projects, or it doesn't fit with my whatever. And then you've got basically just a really heavy paperweight that you're not gonna, you're not gonna use. And I've got a couple of lights that just sit there because I bought them. I thought they'd be good. I didn't do my research, and they literally sit there. I use them for a couple of projects once a year. So not worth it at all.
Out of all the equipment that we've talked about, like lighting, cameras, they're all tough because once you buy them, like, their value goes down right away.
Oh, it's like a car.
I think the one thing that you can invest in and not expect like devaluation is lenses.
Yeah.
Lenses, you can buy whatever the price you buy it, you can use it for 10 years.
It'll be the same price basically.
You'll have to sell it as a used version, but the used versions are not like taking a car, buying it, and it goes down $5,000 once you drive it off the lot. Like, lenses are worth that money because they make it look good.
Yeah.
I like, my most expensive lens is like $2,400, and I bought it 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I could sell it used for $2,000 right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so that is an investment that at least has some return on it, and that you can at least hold on to that value, equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big, especially if you're buying a good lens, or you're buying even an older vintage lens, because I have several vintage lenses.
Some of them even go up.
15 years old.
The Canon 1.0.
Yeah,
like, I think the retail on it was like $1,000, and now people are paying like $6,000 for it.
Yeah.
Because they don't make them anymore, and 1.0 is insane.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of old vintage lenses that I had to get drunk and buy.
Yeah.
My wife's around, so I don't want to say that too loud. And so I bought these lenses because I wanted them, and they retain their value. And honestly, I can use them with whatever camera I have now, and then I can use them with whatever camera I have in 10 years.
Right.
They're not going to change. Manufacturers are still going to make those same mounts or adapters. Because I use a lot of Canon lenses on my Sony cameras.
Yeah, just EF to Sony. Yeah, the mount was perfect.
And, I plan on those lenses as long as you keep them clean, keep the dust out of them, keep them dry. Those things will last you as long as a car, if not longer. And I've
gone through 2 cars by the time I still use my 1.2 all the time. So.
Oh, yeah. The only reason that my very first lens, my Sigma 18 to 55, crapped out is because I got some varnish on it and I can't get it off.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I don't use it anymore. Otherwise, it's still a great lens. Okay. Patrick Brown.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of information, and obviously we can go into like 72 different tangents on this tree, but starting out, I believe that's at least good information for people that are beginning the freelance game.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's very daunting for people when they look at, if someone comes out on a shoot with maybe one of us, or someone when I was going out on shoots with someone that had been in the industry for a few years, and you see they have all this equipment, and you just assume that you need that to start out, and you don't. You don't at all. Like, you can get started.
Like I said, I started out with not even a camera.
Yeah, you can get started with basically nothing. So, and it's the name of the game is just building up and acquiring these things as you go along. You're not gonna run up the top of the mountain and get there the day of it. You're gonna build up. It's one step at a time. It's drops
in a bucket, and it takes some time. And how long have you been doing this now on your own?
Full time, like 3 years.
Oh, it's only been 3. I guess you've been in production for a lot longer, but so I've been doing it like 10 years now. Yeah, I mean, I was doing that. And I feel like you've already like surpassed me in the amount of equipment that you have. Maybe in the 3 years. Yeah. So that's how much of a gear junkie you are compared to me. But I think my purchases have become like very expensive ones, and I don't buy any of like.
I have a lot more stuff than you. I think.
You have more stuff, but I'm going like the high end big jumps.
Stuff, but you're to a point in your career that's what you need.
I do. Well, it's not. Yeah, I just need it to. It's better. Yeah, I don't need it, but it's like I gotta do it if I want to be ahead of the curve. Yeah, and
but yeah, I mean, I think starting out, you just need the basics. Yeah. Don't let what other people have intimidate you. Just start out with what you have. Get to know it.
Honestly, I've thought about this numerous times, and it's whatever the finished product is. However you get there, it doesn't matter what your equipment is. Mm-hmm. It's just what the people are looking at. Mm-hmm. If it looks good and if it sounds good, it doesn't matter how you got there. No. So find out what equipment kind of makes you comfortable and makes you proud of what you put out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, really, that's the name of the game. I take it back. I've had one client ask about a certain camera that I used. They never hired me because I, go figure, don't use a $40,000 camera for my small market in Central Illinois. And no one cares. Literally, no one cares what camera I use. If I show up with a camera and a tripod, no one asks how much I spent on it. Right. No one cares what lens I'm using. As long as the finished product, the delivered results are what you need.
I have another story. I'm going to try to keep this story quick because I know we're going long here. But I was on a radio flyer shoot where they were showing like the new bicycle that they were doing that year. They were breaking out like the rail dolly. They had a red camera, like all this other stuff that if was in my possession, I feel like I could do crazy things with. Mm-hmm. The finished product that I saw, I think somebody in high school with like a nice iPhone or like a Samsung Galaxy could have produced a better video than this. They probably spent like $100,000 on this production. Yeah, and it was just like a little 7-year-old riding the bike along a sidewalk. Yeah. I saw the amount of production that went into it and then the finished product, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Like, I understand why I can be a freelancer in Chicago because I can put out way better stuff than that and charge way less money.
Half the price, yeah.
Way less money. Oh, yeah. Not even half the price. Like, probably what's a 2% of the price?
1/50th?
Yeah. A 50th of the price.
If someone wants to hire Pat for 1/2 the price, though, feel free to give him a call.
Okay. Well, I think that was good.
Yeah. No, this is great. If you guys have any questions or if anyone has any questions that's listening or watching about gear, feel free to ask Pat and I. Pat, where can people contact you?
Through you. I don't.
Okay. That's right. Okay. So
I like to rename. I'm pretty anonymous.
So I am Pat's administrative assistant. You can contact Pat through me. Pester me at any point in time at Droid Media on all your favorite social medias. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.